Barrera, who will be joining me up. We're going to do a tag in, tag out. And this is going to be, kind of a particular sort of research. Sorry, you got it. Sorry, I won't move too far forward. So we're interested in understanding Twitter data, and we think that a lot of the social media data out there and a lot of research has highlighted how social media influences mass behavior. So protests, rebellion, conflict, right? And we think this is really important. But we also think that this obscures kind of what we would argue is an equally important development. And that's namely that world leaders from across the world are increasingly using social media, from showing themselves looking fuzzy with dolphins or kittens, to actually announcing policy options. So this is Dmitry Medvedev, who says the harmonious development of Crimea and Sevastopol as part of our state is one of the main objectives of the Russian government. So we think that mass behavior is super important, but we think it's understudied. What are leaders doing on social media, and what can we use this kind of data to help us understand both about leader behavior and also leader mass interactions? So in fact, following what Christian asked, we have some snazzy graphics, or at least we think they're pretty snazzy. So by middle of 2015, over 80% of world leaders in UN member countries have an active social media account. So Pablo's going to come up here and now talk a little bit about some of the interesting data stuff that we've been able to do. So here you go.
So we believe that looking at the networks of the Twitter users who are following these world leaders on Twitter can help us extract insights about the interactions between these leaders and the data distance between countries. So here, this is a representation of the world leaders network on Twitter. This is based on the followers. Each of the nodes here is one world leader on Twitter, and then the edges represent whenever there's more than 1% of followers in common. So you can see that, as expected, there's a lot of regional clustering. So for example, this cluster here is South America. Of course, language also matters. Like the USA is here between South America and the rest. And the colors indicate the continent to which each of these nodes belongs. But despite this regional and language clustering, we believe that after controlling for these factors, the distances between the positions of these nodes can provide insights into a state affinity that can complement existing measures of policy distance or other types of measures that are usually based on scaling votes from the United Nations Assembly General. And we believe that using Twitter data presents three important advantages. First is that in comparison with other measures of state affinity, it also captures mass level distance, not only elite level distance, and we know that votes in the Assembly General can be strategic and for other reasons. Second, of course, with Twitter data, there's this problem of representativeness, but actually we think that here it plays to our advantage because, who are following these world leaders on Twitter is probably people who are interested in international politics, who are more likely to be knowledgeable about, what the diplomatic relations between these countries. And finally, the third advantage is granularity. So we can track changes in these distances in real time. And in comparison to votes in the Assembly General, again, we could do it day by day if we wanted to. So what we do is we take the full network, not only what I was showing you here, but every single connection between these world leaders based on their followers, and we apply multidimensional scaling techniques to extract locate these world leaders on a latent multidimensional space. And then you can see here that still there's a lot of geographical clustering, but not in every dimension. And when we look at actually the distances between these countries and how they change over time, we actually find that their patterns over time are correlated with changes in foreign relations. So for example, here you can see that this was after the death of Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. The distance between the US and Venezuela reduces, but then after that, not so much. In contrast, you can see this dyadic relation between USA and Russia has been increasing since 2011, after the whole reset button, etc., and especially after the annexation of Crimea. Then the dyadic relation between USA and Iran, you can see here after Rouhani takes office, you can see that there's very sudden decrease in the distance between these two countries. So we believe that these distances over time, of course, they're not going to replace, a careful qualitative analysis of the different events that take place between these countries, but can help us understand, like from this macro level view exactly, what is going on between these countries. And we believe that one possible application of that is actually as perhaps an early warning system of interstate conflict. So here we show some evidence of that. So here the dependent variable is an index of net hostility between countries constructed using IQ's data. So here positive values of the dependent variable indicate an increase in hostility between countries relative to cooperation. And you can see here that we find a positive and significant effect of increasing the Twitter distance score over time on conflict. So this effect is relatively small, so an increase in 1 standard deviation in the distance increases the dependent variable like net hostility in approximately 3–4% of a standard deviation. So it's relatively small, but it's actually larger in magnitude than if you do the same regulations with ideal point distance or the traditional measure of dyadic affinity based on Assembly General votes. And this holds after controlling for a bunch of covariates, the ones that I was mentioning before that could explain these distances, such as shared language, and all of this, there's also fixed effects, there's geographic distance, etc. So this is still preliminary results, but we believe this illustrates the potential of using big data from social media data to help us understand elite behavior and elite mass interactions, and doing this in real time, and being able to learn something about interstate conflict. Thanks.